I wish I was better looking. It would make it easier to point the camera at myself and start filming. But here's a video. My last video was called Hythloday the Antinatalist, and that garnered some responses, both from Hythloday and from Inmendham. Now, I'm not going to go into all their individual objections in this video, but Inmendham said one that he repeated. So I guess we'll have to address that first. Basically, his question was, what projected psychological desire is worth giving a child cancer? Now, Inmendham, you're not going to like the answer, but first, it's kind of an offensive question, and then I don't mind. I think we should talk about offensive stuff, but Inmendham, you do get upset when people say, well, you're an antinatalist, why don't you kill yourself? And this is a similar kind of question to that, but, it needs to be answered. Basically, the answer is, and again, you're not going to like it, but it's the joy of having that child in the first place. And I base that off of the idea that cancer patients don't prefer non-existence to existence. Now, that's an empirical claim, and I don't really have the data on that. We would have to go ask the cancer patients if they would prefer non-existent to existence, which is a lot like, why don't you go kill yourself? And so I'm not going to go around collecting that data. But that's what I think about it, is that the cancer patients, for them, the benefit of existing is still greater than the cost of it, even if they have terminal cancer. So there's that, and we're going to go into benefits and costs of life a bit more in this video. We're going to talk a bit about environmental economics and how that, specifically the part of environmental economics about population and having children. And I'm hoping it leads to a larger conversation, because environmental economics is certainly one of the places where humans are not doing well in right now. We're doing extreme harm to the environment, and this is likely to result in the extinction of the human race. So I think it's a conversation worth having. So let's get started. Okay, so here's the economics of having children. So this is a question that antinatalism asks. Should people have children? And I don't like what they're saying for a couple of reasons. First of all, I have a fundamental objection to the idea that it relies on this claim that happiness is unimportant, and I think that happiness is fundamentally important. I agree with Inmendham that sentient life has intrinsic value. Another thing about it is that it's too dichotomous. It's like, yes, we'd have children, or no, we shouldn't have children. Where with economic thought, we're not looking for yes or no answers. The question is how much? How much of this, how much of that, how much should we have of having children? And of course, it's always the same answer. It's the point where the marginal benefit equals the marginal cost. I thought I was saying, okay, I'm getting sick of that answer. But again, it's almost my answer for just about everything. And so I understand why he's getting sick of it. You could almost call it my logical absolute, except that it's not absolute. When we get into situations of the benefit of one person imposes costs on the other person or decreases their benefit somehow, that's where it gets tricky. But I don't like the antinatalism answer of we should just stop and we just give up. And we'll get into that. That's the conclusion of this video. So we'll keep going. It's about overpopulation. Basically, is the marginal social benefit over the marginal social cost. Like, how is it altogether when all the individuals are added up? Now, we certainly can have overpopulation if people are not living sustainably, which is what's going on right now. But in the future, we might be able to figure out how to live sustainably. And if we can live sustainably, well, as long as the people aren't doing damage to the planet and to the animals and to each other, then there's no such thing as overpopulation. But right now, certainly, if people aren't living sustainably, I mean, it's almost like one person not living sustainably is overpopulation. I think that's probably too extreme, but I don't think one person's going to be able to do significant damage to the planet. But right now with 6 billion of us, or 9, I can't even keep track of how many more. I think it's 9 billion now, right? 9 billion people on the planet, and we're not living sustainably. That's a problem. So, sustainability. The definition of this is meeting the needs of the current population without compromising the needs of future generations. And we've got 3 identified areas of sustainability where it applies. First of all, there's social state sustainability. Basically, if people aren't happy with society, they'll overthrow it, right? Like if everybody's a slave, they'll rebel. And so therefore that society is not sustainable, as it will get overthrown. Environmental sustainability, that has to do with resources and the global system. If we use up all the resources, then they won't be there for future generations. If we screw up the global system of the air and the oceans and the plants and the animals and all of this, the system will collapse. Economic sustainability. Basically, endeavors that lose money will go out of business, and so therefore they're not sustainable. So, I mean, we've just stated the problem. Basically, a growing population of non-environmentally sustainable A growing population of non-environmentally sustainable people is bad for the environment. I mean, that's basically a tautology, right? If you're doing bad things to the environment, it's bad for the environment. And the more people you have doing bad things to the environment, that's worse for the environment. Now, enforcing the amount of children people have, like with a law at gunpoint or something like that, that goes against social sustainability. It goes across autonomy. People won't participate. So enforcement isn't the right answer. The right answer is again, doing the cost-benefit analysis. By examining the costs and benefits, we can influence the conditions in which people make decisions without loss of autonomy. Basically, if we increase the cost of having kids, people will have less kids. If we decrease the benefits of having kids, people will have less kids. Now, this first one, increasing the costs, I don't like it. Increasing the costs of having kids, these costs are like you have to feed them, you have to educate them, provide for the health, this kind of stuff. Increasing the cost makes people worse off, especially the poor people, right? Increasing the food costs is really going to hurt poor people. So I don't think that's the right way to go. Instead, we want to focus on this decrease of benefits thing. Now, decreasing benefits by substitution, it seems like that would make people worse off, right? If you decrease their benefits, they have less benefits. But what we're actually doing here is increasing the benefits of other options, which creates a substitution effect so that people have less kids. So here are benefits that people have for having kids, and here's things we can do about it. First of all is the extraction of labor. Especially in like agrarian communities, people will have kids because they need workers for their family farm. And in developed countries, it's a bit different, but it's still the same idea of extraction of labor where it's a trade-off. We want our kids to take care of us when we're old. Basically, the trade is, hey, I'll take care of you when you're young, you take care of me when you're old. Now, what we can do about this is we can have increased automation through technology. Basically, we're producing more now for output of labor than we were in the past. Therefore, increased automation results in people needing to have less kids. Similarly, social care for the elderly If we do that as a society, then it decreases the benefits of having kids for someone to be able to take care of you when you're older. Personal status, especially back in the in older times and in less developed countries, having a big family is a measure of personal status. So instead, we can emphasize other things. Say, hey, your personal status comes from your morality. We'll emphasize morality. And being a good person is what makes you a good person. Emphasize productivity, providing for other people by going to work. That we can attribute to personal status. Therefore, people don't need to have kids in order to have personal status. And child mortality. If the chances that your child's not going to survive are high, then you'll have more kids in order to have one that does survive. So we can counter this by having increased health services. We can counter this by having increased sanitation. That's a big one. Increased sanitation reduces child mortality significantly. So there's that. And then inequality. If you want one of your kids to be successful in life, then increased social mobility will make it so that it'll increase the probability that an individual will, be successful. Therefore, you won't need to have as many kids in order to try and achieve that probability. So this has all been empirically verified. Basically, here we've got population on the left-hand side of the graph and development on the right-hand side of the graph. And this curve kind of goes up and reaches some point where people start having less kids. And we're kind of like here right now, and we're hoping it'll continue downward to some point where the marginal social benefit equals the marginal social cost. But that would be assuming that this trend is going to continue, which is the fallacy of induction. So far, it looks like this is what's happening. As we get more developed, then people have less kids. And hopefully that trend continues in the future, but it's not guaranteed. So some benefits are not diminishable. That's why it won't ever reach down to zero, right? There's joys in having a family and going to the zoo and all this kind of stuff. When you have kids, you get to see the world again through their eyes, and you get to teach them how to do mathematics, and you get to see the world anew again and be able to look at the world through their eyes. Explain all, like the 2-year-olds are always asking why, and you have to explain to them why everything is. And sometimes, as an adult, you've forgotten about why. So that's one of the benefits that we're not going to be able to diminish. Also passing on the genetic code, if that's, the kind of thing you're into. Evolution does make more complex organisms as it goes on, and I like that, but it doesn't have to necessarily be my DNA that does it. I don't really think there's anything special about my DNA that I need to pass on. That's the end of my presentation. I hope you found it informative, and again, I always welcome comments and responses, so thanks for watching.